going to do tonight is we're going to take the next hour and we're going to talk about biological medicine. European biological medicine. I've been involved in healthcare for over 20 years, and about 10 years ago we were introduced to the Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland, a doctor named Dr. Thomas Rau, and he's responsible for running, he's the head medical director of that facility, and it's the largest foundational medicine clinic in the world, and we'll talk about what that means. Another way to say it for y'all tonight is it's the largest holistic medicine facility in the world. It's set up as a hospital. They see about 350 outpatients a day. They've got 7 doctors, including Dr. Rau's 8, and then a bunch of staff, of course, supporting all those folks. And most of the people that end up at the clinic are coming from all around the world, a lot from America, Australia, South America. We did a 2-year program and then an internship at the clinic, and during that internship, literally in one day we saw people from Portugal, Australia, America, South America. We had people from Saudi Arabia. We had someone that would speak Arabic, then the person would then interpret it into German, and then the person would turn around and interpret it into English so that we all knew what was happening to this one person in the room. So it was quite an experience. And what I'm going to do with you tonight, which I've not really done before, is take you through a little bit of a lineage of how this all occurred. So, I'm going to do my best. I'm not a great speller. We're going to do our best. Dr. Enderlin. Dr. Enderlin is a zoologist and a researcher and an author. This is one of his books. Okay? And a zoologist. And he's responsible for discovering what's called pleomorphism. The days of monomorphic thought in regards to medicine is coming to an end. It's coming to an end. And what I mean by monomorphic thinking is the idea that one thing causes one thing, and that a bacteria never changes its form. A virus is a virus and never crosses any lines. Monomorphic thinking is attached to mechanistic thinking, which really permeates orthodox conventional medicine in the West. Okay? It's the idea that certain bacteria make us sick, and if you kill those bacteria, then the illness goes away. It's a monomorphic and a mechanistic way of looking at how the body functions. What Dr. Enderlin discovered through research and discovered through using something called a dark field microscope, he discovered that depending on the environment that a bacteria, a virus, a fungus, or a mold was living in, depending on the environment, those animals would actually change forms and try and hide. And so he discovered and coined what's called pleomorphism, the idea that many, many changes can occur to the same beast depending on the environment it's living in. And that's proven scientifically, and it's been researched for a very long time now. He was instrumental in that concept and helping doctors understand pleomorphism, as opposed to mono. Okay? So that's Dr. Enderlin. Very important in regards to biological medicine. Dr. Worthman, responsible for the International Association of Isopathic Therapy and milieu treatment. That's a mouthful. He's responsible for taking Dr. Enderlin's work and furthering it to understand that if we can change the environment, then the bugs change on their own. So he worked in homeopathy and in isopathy, creating specific remedies that change the environment and wake the system up to infections or non-infections. For instance, everyone in the room tonight has streptococcus in their mouth. You need it. You have to have it as a human being. But if the environment of your system and in your mouth changes, the strep goes from non-pathogenic, which means it's not making you sick right now, to pathogenic. Now it's going to make you sick. So he was instrumental in understanding, again, Enderlin's work and understanding that there's ways to affect the environment so that the bugs that quote-unquote make us sick go from pathogenic to non-pathogenic. Dr. Reich, Wilhelm Reich, another scientist, medical doctor, researcher, psychiatrist. He was interested in Chinese medicine and looked at the idea of qi, energy, life force. And he did experiments to literally discover this life force that permeates the universe, permeates all living things, and he was able to show that in many different experiments. And he was very important in regards to biological medicine, in regards to understanding that human beings are biological and energetic beings. That we are not, you don't have a state of health that is good one day and bad the next. We're always in a flux. Okay? And our thoughts and our energetics, our energetic bodies, and you have several of them, have a big effect on our health. So Wilhelm Reich was very important as well. Let's see, who am I going to forget? Ah, okay. Dr. Hal Huggins, DDS. Dr. Royal Lee, DDS, dentist. Hal Huggins is the grandfather of biological medicine in relationship to biological dentistry. He was one of the first people to go amalgam, which is the blending of several different metals, mercury, tin, copper, other metals. The amalgam is actually causing illnesses for people, causing neurological problems. And he spent his entire career proving that and taking amalgams out of people and turning diseases around because of it. Extremely important to understand that that is also based in science. And it's an interesting thing happening right now. Even the federal government, if you have a mercury exposure in a building, they'll shut the building down immediately. Literally, if you break a thermometer, it's a hazard. And they'll shut the building down. They'll get you out. Okay? In the dental office, if a dentist starts to work with amalgam, and he's creating amalgam in the dental office, it's done in a very specific way. It's extremely dangerous. They know that it's an environmental hazard. If I pack it into your tooth, however, suddenly it becomes non-hazardous, and you're allowed to leave the building. So we work with a biological dentist that does different tests for folks in relationship to not just the heavy metal that's leaking from the amalgams, but also the electrical charge that's created because of the amalgam. Because when you have two metals come close together, there's an electrical charge that starts to happen. So they have something called galvanization. And they'll look at different teeth, every single tooth that has a filling in it, and they'll tell me the electrical charge that's coming off of it. You should have no electricity running through your head, folks. Okay, it's not a natural occurrence. So when you pack somebody, the average American has 9 dental fillings, the average American has 9 amalgam fillings in. Okay, about 80% of dentists today are still using amalgam. There was a divergence about 150 years ago in relationship to this concept. Before that, they were not using any heavy metals or amalgams to do fillings. Because during that time, there was a lot of people making hats, specifically out of beaver fur. And to set a hat into a shape, they used mercury. And so they would take it and they would shape it with mercury. And what happened is they started to coin the phrase the Mad Hatter's disease. Because if you get mercury toxic, there's specific symptoms that start to show up. And the person feels and acts a little crazy. Okay, they're a little lit up on the mercury and they get brain fog, they can't concentrate. There's a lot of symptoms that are associated with metals. So Hal Huggins was very instrumental in showing that and taking it out of people and proving that this was an issue for health. At the clinic in Switzerland, if you were to go to the clinic for an illness, before you see a medical doctor, regardless of what you're there for, before you see a medical doctor, you will go see the dentist. There's 3 giant buildings. One of them is a big dental facility. So you go see the dentist, first day. He's going to look in your mouth, he's going to remove all the amalgam. He's going to ask you if you have any root canals, and depending on your illness, if you have root canals, they're going to be extracted for you. Once your dental situation is cleaned up, then they send you off to the medical doctors to find out, okay, how are we going to help you with this illness? Because they know for a fact that if the amalgam issue in the body is not handled, because remember something, every one of them leaks 35 micrograms of mercury vapor every single hour that it's in your mouth. Okay? So if I got 9 of them, I got a big leak going on all the time, 24/7. It never goes away. They know that that is such a toxic load on the autonomic nervous system and on the body that if they leave it and try and do therapies around it, they don't get very far. But if I can remove that and take that particular stressor out of the body and help it start to detoxify the organs from that, and especially the nervous system, all the other therapies are much more powerful and actually last much longer. It's dramatic to the point where they won't deal with you if you're not going to sit in a dental chair for them. Just if you're not going to do that, you're setting us up for failure. So we help people a lot here to try and deal with that. And we're very fortunate to have a great biological dentist only a half hour down the road. And he's been doing it for over 20 years, and he knows Dr. Rao, so it's a really great situation for us. Prior to knowing him, we were literally sending people to Arizona, or to New Mexico rather, to New Mexico to have their dental work done, and then they would come back here and we'd start to work on them. So it's been a great blessing to have him. Dr. Royal Lee, also a dentist, who discovered that nutrition, orthomolecular medicine, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, those things are extremely important for the function of the human body. And so he designed what's called Standard Process. It's a whole food company. He literally uses whole foods, used whole foods in relationship to helping heal the body. And that company is still in existence. They're about 95 years old, something like that, maybe 100 years old now. And he was very instrumental in realizing, helping practitioners realize that nutrition is absolutely paramount. So these folks, including Dr. Enderlin, of course, these folks were really kind of the fathers of biological medicine in a lot of ways. From there came Dr. Rao. He's the head medical director at the clinic at Paracelsus, and then, fortunately, True Wellness. And that's kind of really, quite honestly, how close we are to that experience. It's been exciting. It's been an exciting 10 years to be able to tap into the information and the science behind that. All of those folks I mentioned have written more than one book. And so the reason I bring all of this up is because what we're going to talk about tonight and go through tonight is nothing that I discovered. None of this information is mine. Okay? I'm a parrot. And I'm just telling you what I was taught. And it took a long time to do this. The other reason I'm doing this is not to have you go out and buy all these books and sit down and study all this stuff before you take step 1 in regards to using biological therapy. The point to all of this, quite honestly, is, let's see if I can do it. You have to trust in the science. It's the first thing. If you're going to have decent results, and I say this to everybody in regards to any kind of medical stuff, I've got people that come in and say to me, I need an operation. The first thing I say to them is make sure you like your surgeon. And they're like, what? Well, make sure you actually like your surgeon. Okay? Have a conversation with them, spend some time, and know that you like this person. And if you don't like that person, don't let them operate on you. Because that has a big effect on it. So it's the same thing with this. At some point, you got to turn yourself over and go, I'm going to trust in the science. It's all been done for me. They've been in class for 10 years. I'm going to actually trust in the science. So that's really why I tried to cover this tonight, to give you an idea of where this is all coming from. And it's not alternative medicine. It's not considered alternative medicine. Dr. Rao considers this foundational medicine. It's the foundation of how your body actually functions. And everything and all the therapies that are done in regards to biological medicine is directed at changing the internal environment, or what's called the milieu, and supporting healthy cells. All the way down to the bottom of dealing with individual cells and the health of your cells. Because if we can deal with the health of your cells, then the rest of the body, since we're made up of those cells, starts to follow along. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do, and the first thing that Kelly and I needed to do when we jumped into this venture was we trusted in the science. And we started to do a lot of research, of course, and we continue to do that. The next thing you need to do is remove blockages, remove blocks to regulation. That's the second thing we need to do. You need to start to remove blockages from regulation. What does that look like? What does that mean? Here's what regulation is. Regulation is the body's ability to deal and compensate with stress appropriately. It's also the body's ability to function appropriately. I'll give you a good example of regulation. In your sinus cavities are receptors. And when you breathe in, your body gets an idea of what the outside temperature is. Your skin does it too, but there's receptors in your sinuses that are really responsible for this. So when we breathe in, the body goes, oh, here's the temperature, and it talks to your pituitary gland in your brain, and it talks to your thyroid, and it talks to your adrenal glands. These are control mechanisms like thermostats in the house. So I breathe in, and the body goes, it's cold outside, okay? It immediately turns my liver on, and it heats my liver up to attempt to keep my core warm, okay? So the liver gets turned on. Now, the liver's on, and I'm warming up, and my skin starts to read the temperature that it's really cold out there, and my muscles start to shiver. Now the body's gone into a second phase of trying to warm up. Now I've gone from my liver, which is an organ function, okay, to a totally different function. I'm now shaking to stay warm. Turn it completely around. It's hot out. My skin registers the heat. What's our body start to do? Sweat.
Sweat.
Moisture comes on the surface, evaporation, starts to cool the system down. This is regulation. This is the body's ability to regulate. I have external temperature, I have internal temperature, I'm going to regulate that. Your body works very hard 24/7 to keep your brain a particular temperature all the time. It'll let your extremities go cold, it'll even let your organs start to shut down in extreme cold, but it'll work really hard to keep your brain at the consistent temperature, and when that finally fails, you're done. This is an aspect of regulation. There's also an aspect of regulation that talks about the body's awareness that we're laying down or standing up. And that's a simple test that we do to determine how well is this person actually regulated. When regulation goes away, it's a symptom that illness is going to come down the road. Okay? So we want to be able to regulate appropriately, and there are blockages to regulation. How do we remove the blockages to regulation? And let's do this for you. I'm going to draw you a picture tonight. This is your illness picture. This is your personal illness picture, okay? In regards to regulation, there are primary and secondary blockages to regulation. There's things that affect my nervous system that immediately make my body stop going through that resting, healing, digesting, or burning energy appropriately, okay? And so we're thinking about those practitioners, those doctors that wrote those books and the science that's behind this. One of the big things that blocks regulation is heavy metal. We get mercury from the air, from food, from water, and from fillings, especially from mom. If mom has a lot in while I'm in utero, we're going to end up with a lot of heavy metal in the blood of the baby, or in the tissue of the baby, or in the nervous system of the baby. And this is called being preloaded. We got lots of folks that come in and go, well, I never had any amalgam in my mouth. Well, you're breathing air. I mean, Pennsylvania has the third highest level of mercury in the air. We're eating food. Okay, and if mom had any, you still have some. So it's a part of an illness, a personal illness picture. Some people deal with it better than others, but it's a stressor. We're going to remove blockages to the regulation. That's one of them. Well, you go see a good biological dentist, and then we give you oral stuff to start to pull the heavy metal out of the tissue. Maybe Dr. Carcetti recommends some IVs, and Kelly administers some IVs for us that, again, pull the metal out of the tissue. And when you start to do that, peripheral symptoms start to go away. People's headaches start to disappear. Fatigue starts to disappear. Rashes may show up and then disappear. All kinds of stuff happens as you're starting to eliminate that stress on the body. By removing blockages to regulation. All kinds of therapies, nasotherapy, homeopathy, changing our diet. there's plenty of foods that we eat that actually block our regulation. There's plenty of foods that we eat that we think are good for us that we actually have an allergy to. So there's all kinds of different ways, and all the therapies that are done in biological medicine are absolutely always keyed into this idea of, can I remove blockages from my natural regulation? Because if I do that, and my body starts to regulate appropriately again, you're moving back towards health. You're going from degeneration back to regeneration, okay? So, blockages to regulation. Mercury is one of them. Scars on your skin actually cause a regulatory problem. Chemicals from the environment and from what we put on our skin, huge problem for the nervous system. Especially chemicals and metals, guys, because these are inorganic substances. The body doesn't have a marker for such things. Bacteria, virus, fungus, mold. Who believes they're the primary things that make us sick? Bacteria, virus, fungus, and mold. Oh, come on. Most people think they're the things that make us sick. The interesting thing about that is that a good functioning immune system is actually designed to deal with bacteria, virus, fungus, and mold. They're living things. My gut, if it's appropriately populated, got about 80% good bacteria, quote unquote, about 20% bad bacteria, quote unquote, and what that really means is that I have enough pathogenic bacteria in my system that my nervous system has markers for it, so that when I get infected with something, the body goes, oh, we know what that is, go get that. If I don't have that good balance, then I don't have that marker, I can get infected and the body doesn't respond to it. And just allows the infection to peripherate through the system. It just makes you sick. So it's really important in relationship to the digestive tract to have this good balance of bacteria. And heavy metals and chemicals have a huge effect on that. Especially heavy metals will paralyze the digestive tract. There's things called alveoli, little tiny hairs, all through the digestive tract that take in nutrients. They become paralyzed with heavy metals. They don't function anymore. A lot of people that suffer with that issue find that they're constipated. So they have big effects on our regulation. Bacteria, virus, fungus, and mold, if I have a good working immune system, my body should be able to deal with that. It should get a fever. Get a fever, 101, 102. Let it burn. Your body's dealing with bacteria, virus, fungus, and mold, and it should be able to do that if you have a good working system. Food allergy. Food allergy. 60% of the food that we eat tends to send the immune system into a turn-on. Now, a lot of people go, well, it's good to turn my immune system on. Nope, not good to turn your immune system on in regards to food. Your body should not see food as something that it needs to respond to. But about 60% of the food we eat actually turns the immune system on. It starts to wear us out. If my immune system's turning on because I'm eating foods instead of looking at bacteria, virus, fungus, and mold, then why would I think, oh, wow, when I get an infection, when I actually get a cold, if my body's all taken up with food allergy stuff, why wouldn't it let the other things grow and become out of balance? So we look at food allergies. They're a primary issue for folks, as well as poor nutrition. It's hard to eat well today. It's hard to eat well today. Even if you're eating all organic, it's not an easy thing to do because there's minerals and that have been stripped from the soil. The food that we're getting doesn't have the same quality of nutrients that our grandparents and great-grandparents had. So the apple that great-granddad ate is not the apple that we're eating today because of this issue in regards to the minerals and the loss of the food. So nutrition is an issue. And then you have genetics. That's a potential. Just because dad had diabetes doesn't mean you're going to get diabetes. You'll get the diabetes if you eat just like dad ate and you don't change that. But if you pull yourself from that environment and change the way he ate, you won't turn that gene on. Genes are just a potential. Some are absolutely written in stone. I have brown eyes. That's a genetic thing. Can't shift that. But in relationship to turning on and off diseases, if I don't want pancreatic cancer, then I'm not going to eat like Dad did. Okay? So genetics is absolutely a part of it. Personal injury. Injuries and illnesses. We'll put this one down here. And we're going to make one more here. So, personal injuries and illnesses that happen to us absolutely affect your long-term health. It's even becoming apparent to some conventional orthodox medicine people that cancers can show up because of an injury, because the person actually had an injury. Then what that's showing us is that the immune system is so tanked that the injury is the straw that breaks the camel's back, and the person can't deal with the cancer, because you've all had cancer at least once already in your lives. The average person 6 to 9 times. You don't know it because your body just handles it. But if I put you in a situation where you're dealing with it but you don't know it, and then I injure you, you got some other immune stressors, maybe you got a new scar, who knows, maybe you got some other personal emotional stressors, then suddenly the body doesn't have the ability to deal with the cancer, and now you're up against a diagnosed illness. Everybody, oh, here's the last one. Did I put it up here? I did not. Personal constitution. Who you are, how you deal, how you've been taught to deal with stress, with life, what you think, what your outlook is, what your expectations are. That has a lot to do with how all of this affects us. Every single person has an illness picture or a health picture. Every single one of us is up against these issues. Here's the interesting thing. I could have every one of you write each one of these down and draw little lines around it, and every one of you, it would look different. For every one of us, it's a different picture. Same stressors, different picture. So it's a matter of, well, how bad's your nutrition? How scarred up are you? Are you sensitive to the chemicals? Do you have no metals in your system? Do you have a lot of personal injuries in the past? Do you not deal with bacteria? I don't know. But everybody has a picture. And what we do is we work hard to remove the blockages to regulation, because these are the things that shift that regulation for us. How do you do that? You undergo therapy. There's no way around it. There's just no way around it. If you're going to change this stuff, you've got to undergo therapy. Well, what's that look like? Could be everything from changing your diet to doing neural therapy, which our medical doctor does, little injections into acupuncture points to shift the energy in your body. Maybe it's a trip to the biological dentist for us. But the bottom line is that whether you're here or whether you go to the clinic in Switzerland, you fly to the clinic in Switzerland, you sit down, Dr. Rao says, oh, it's wonderful that you're here, fantastic, have a seat, and now you'll be well. Nope. They are going to take you through treatment. They are going to take you through treatment. Just because you're there doesn't mean suddenly, oh, you're with Dr. Rao, you're well. They're going to wring you out. Okay? They're going to tear you up. They're going to make big changes for you. Because typically they only have a few weeks to do that. People that go are typically 2 to 5 weeks at the clinic. Okay? So we don't have a lot of time. We're going to wring you out real good. We're going to make some big changes for you. The only way to do that is to undergo therapy. Okay? Let's see. This one everyone loves. You got to think and act differently. You got to think and act differently. So the bottom line is, literally, no kidding, to make this work, you got to trust in the science, you got to remove blockages to regulation, you got to undergo therapy, and here's the hard one, you got to think and act differently. What do I mean by that? Well, most folks suffer from what's called stinking thinking. Okay? And if you have stinking thinking, it affects your physiology. It absolutely affects your physiology. They've proven this more than once. So we help folks start to think differently. Well, what does that mean? It could be as simple as, hey, listen, I don't want you eating processed food anymore. You can't go to McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy. Well, why not? Well, it's not food. Well, what do you mean it's not food? Well, it's full of chemicals. It makes your brain think you're satiated, but the truth is you're really not, and it's full of sodium, blah, blah. Everybody knows there's bad things about fast food. Doesn't mean people aren't still eating it. You've got to change the way you think, because if you change the way you think, you will naturally change the way you act. This is a powerful thing. One of the most powerful things up here is change the way you think, you'll change the way you act. If you change the way you act, you're going to change the outcome of your health. A lot of this revolves around diet, guys. A lot of it will revolve around diet. A lot of it revolves around stress, how we're dealing with stress. A lot of it revolves around how we're dealing with our families or our loved ones, okay? You got to start to make decisions and go, listen, I need to do what's right for my health, okay? And if that means that I'm not going to hang around Mr. Stinking Thinking because, you're just negative all the time, then you need to purge that person from your life. Or you need to influence them. Because there's always something going on when two people get together. Somebody's influencing somebody else. Somebody's always buying, somebody's always selling. Okay? I'm trying to influence you all tonight. Right? So this has a big impact. There's also, when I put this up here in regards to think and act differently, and undergoing treatments and removing blockages to regulation, the other thing that's important in here, guys, is the emotional component. Our emotions are somewhere between 80 and 90% responsible. Our thought life, 80 to 90% responsible for illnesses. There's a woman named Carolyn Leaf, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, wrote a great book called Who Switched Off My Brain. And she takes you through it. And she explains that 89% of all illnesses first start in your thought life. And then your physiology has to follow that. Okay? I just watched a great thing the other night on TED Talks. Anybody ever watch TED Talks? Check this one out. It's about body language. And she discovers, a great lady, researcher, she discovered that holding certain positions in your body will affect your testosterone and your cortisol. Just holding positions for 2 minutes a day will affect these levels in your blood. She did it with animals and humans. I'm not going to give you the secret. Go watch it on TED Talks. So, trust in the science, remove blockages to regulation, undergo treatments to remove the blockages to regulation, think and act differently. Tough thing to do. Here's another tough thing to do for people. Heal. Huh? Yep. You got to give yourself permission to heal. What does that look like? Resting. The only time you heal is when you rest and sleep. So I need you to rest. I got people come in all the time and go, my schedule's so insane, I can barely get here. Well, you're not healing. If you're that jammed up, that you're overscheduled in your life, you don't have an opportunity to heal. So, just like at the clinic, okay, see, when they have you at the clinic, it's kind of great because they got you captured. There's plenty of healing and resting time. There's a room dedicated to just going in and sitting down and staring out the window at the amazing mountains in Switzerland. That's all. That's all you're allowed to do. You're just going to go in, you're going to stare out the windows. You know how uncomfortable that is for people? You know how uncomfortable that is for people? That gets uncomfortable. We want you to relax and rest. Well, that means I got to be with myself. I got to start to feel like what I feel like. That's uncomfortable, but really powerful. Really powerful. So, heal, rest, supplement. You have to supplement.